Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross from PTCGRadio, and I'm back with a brand new type of video. If there's one thing I've discovered from the internet, it's that people like lists, and my YouTube channel has so far been entirely list-free. This is a bad thing, and today, ladies and gentlemen, I begin to rectify it with the top 10 cards from Phantom Forces. I will, of course, give you a reminder of this at the end as well when we wrap up, but if there are any top 10 lists you would like to see related to the Pokémon trading card game, stick them in the comments below, and if I get chance, I will try and get round to them. We can't do a list without an honourable mention. I don't know why, but everybody else can't do a top 10 without an honourable mention, and gosh darn it, I want to be like the other cool people on the internet. My honourable mention is Golbat and Crobat. Yes, I know that's two cards, but the good news is, this is my list, and I can do as I darned well please. They both have this Sneaky Bite or Surprise Bite ability, which basically allows you to put damage counters on your opponent's Pokémon as you wish, when you evolve them. Golbat allows you to put 2 damage counters down, and Crobat allows you to put 3 damage counters down. You put them with their abilities, their attacks, Golbat, which does 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, and Crobat that does 30 damage to 1. Don't forget Dimension Valley, a card which may be popping up on this top 10 list, will reduce the attack cost by 1, and will actually allow these cards to retreat for free, attack for free. They also retreat for free, so there's another bonus, and have resistance to fighting, but you could play an entirely energyless deck. Now that would of course be silly, because if you lose the Stadium War, by which I mean your opponent gets stadiums out and you don't, and theirs gets stuck and yours doesn't, or you can't draw into one of your 4 stadiums, you will find yourself out of action very, very quickly. But they're kind of cool. I don't think they're good enough for a real deck. I've played a couple games and I'm not a huge fan, but they have potential, and that's why they are my honourable mention. And as we go into the top 10, I do remind you all this is, firstly, a very personal list. This is my top 10. If you disagree with me, fantastic, pop it in the comments, but I would ask you to put an entire top 10 in the comments. Put your top 10 in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. I would love to see it. The other thing which I should point out is, this has just come out, this set. We don't have tournament results. We don't know what's good and what isn't. So, I may well, if people want to see it, do a retrospective doing the same list in a couple months' time to show you what the top 10 cards actually were based on tournament results. Coming in at number 10, Lissandra's Trump card. This is a card which could easily go up in the top 10 or fall down, like most of them could. It basically resets everybody's deck. Your cards from your discard pile go into your deck, except for Lissandra's Trump card, and the only thing that isn't in your deck is the Pokemon and energy which is already on your field. In theory, this will make it easier for you to draw into supporters, because you will have the same amount of supporters you had at the beginning of the game, but you will have less cards in your deck due to the Pokemon and energy being on the field. However, those of you that don't play that many supporters, especially if people drop Lissandra's Trump card early in the game, will find yourself very quickly drawing dead more often, because if you're running 10 supporters, that's not enough. You might get away with it occasionally, but the more often somebody resets your deck, the more likely you are to draw dead. Although, as I've said, if you've got a bench full of Pokemon and energy, you will actually be slightly more likely to draw into supporters, because you've got the same number of supporters in less cards. At number 9, Robo Substitute, which is a card I cannot decide if I love or not. It's essentially a 30 HP colourless Pokemon. The card cannot retreat if you put it in the active, and you've basically got to either switch out of it or just discard it, and you are free to discard it at any time you like. This is good for buying yourself turns. You pop it on the bench, and then essentially if something gets knocked out and you've got nothing with which to attack, you stick Robo Substitute active to take a punch in the face, and then put your other one up afterwards. Decks like Donphan or Gengar, which involve hitting and then retreating to the bench, can put Robo Substitute up there instead of something like a Sigilyph, and what that will allow you to do is basically buy yourself a turn. You can then switch out of Robo Substitute, or just discard it and attack again. It's not as good sometimes as something like a Sigilyph that you can leave active, stop your opponent attacking, and then retreat with Floatstone. You can't retreat Robo Substitute. You can either discard it or use switches, but none of us are playing that many switches. So useful, but not. If you were allowed to retreat Robo Substitute, he would be an awful lot higher on my list. As it is, you stick him active and then he's kind of stuck there, and you can either discard him, which means you've used him for one turn but only one turn, or you can just let your opponent kill it, but that might take a little while. At number 8, Night March. I love Night March. I've been testing this a lot. I've already posted one Night March video on my YouTube channel, and I will be posting a deck breakdown very, very soon. It may even be the next video after this one. 3 cards, Joltik, Pumpkaboo and Lampent, all of which have the Night March attack, all of which do 20 damage times the number of Pokemon in your discard pile that have the Night March attack. Joltik does it for a DCE, Pumpkaboo does it for 3 colourless energy, and Lampent does it for a psychic and a double colourless. Remembering of course that Dimension Valley will bring Pumpkaboo down to a DCE, and Lampent down to a psychic and a colourless energy. Now, essentially what you do is you just build a deck around this, pad the discard pile with Night March Pokemon, and hit for good damage. The problem is, the more Night March Pokemon you put in a discard pile, the less ones you have to attack with, and also the HP is very, very low, so even an opponent that isn't setting up very well will probably be able to take a prize every single turn. What you will have to do is start knocking out EXs in one hit towards the end of the game to skew the prize card trade in your favour. The other thing you have to watch, of course, is if you have a slow start with this deck, your Pokemon are of such low HP that you're going to lose very quickly. I cannot decide if I love this deck or it's too frustrating for me to play, which is why these cards sit in at number 8. But quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I like my early testing. I've beaten Frizzy and Genesect with this, I've beaten Evil Tower with this, I've beaten Donphan with this. I am beating the top decks with Night March. What I am not doing is having a list which I love enough, and I'm beating them consistently. At number 7 we have Battle Compressor, a card which you will want to play in Night March. Battle Compressor allows you to discard up to 3 cards from your deck. Doesn't make you discard 3 because the deck is essentially a secret area. Nobody's allowed to know what's in it, so it's up to 3. And this is useful for decks like Night March that want the Night March Pokemon in the discard pile. It's also useful for decks, in fact, like Flareon that want Pokemon in the discard pile. Do remember, of course, Lissandra's trump card, which resets the deck and puts all of these cards back in your deck. It also puts Battle Compressor back in your deck, however, and if your deck is consistent enough, you'll draw into your Battle Compressors and get those cards in the discard pile fairly sharpish. But Battle Compressor is better than just for Night March and Flareon. If you're running a deck like a Bronzong deck or a Dark deck and you want energy in the discard pile, Battle Compressor gets it in the discard pile easily. Everybody always wanted, when they were playing Darkrai decks, to have an Ultra Ball and 2 Dark Energy start. This gets 3 Dark Energy in the discard pile on turn 1 if you want it. The other thing that people are sleeping on with this particular deck, this particular card I should say, is the fact that it allows you to thin your deck. If you're getting late game, you can just discard your ends if you've got a big prize lead, or you can discard your Ultra Balls if you've got all your Pokemon out, etc. You can use this to make sure that your deck is full of the cards you want, and not full of the cards you don't, and that will statistically raise the odds of drawing into the cards you want. I like this card. At number 6, the Metal cards. Now, I think I've got these a little bit high, but the fact is they're in there for potential. I can see people making a very, very good deck of this, whereas I can see Night March being, on average, better than this deck. But I don't see Night March really blowing up the competitive scene, whereas a good list of this could. This is a list made directly after the set comes out, which means I am going more as much for potential as I am for just immediately that looks amazing and I can use it now. These cards are all fantastic. Gengar EX hits for 170 with a muscle band. Aegislash hits for half decent damage but has an ability which stops it being attacked by anything with special energy, which nowadays is an awful lot of cards. And Bronzong has an ability which allows you to pop energy onto these Pokemon when they are on the bench. I like Bronzong, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think he's going to be as good as Electric was. We're not in the same format. I haven't played with this deck yet, but I've played against it a number of times, and I've generally taken care of it fairly easily, because I am building decks like Speed Lugia and Night March and Flareon, which I'm building for speed, and this deck is not really fast enough to keep up at the moment. However, in time I believe it will be. It has the consistency due to Bronzong. Aegislash is really good for screwing over your opponent's Pokemon, and Gengar EX hits for big damage with a muscle band. Moving into the top 5, we see Dimension Valley. I've mentioned it a couple times, there isn't very much to say about this. It reduces the attack cost of Psychic Pokemon by 1 colourless energy. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very good. Anything which lowers attack costs or which accelerates energy has always been good, and if you look at cards like Mewtwo or Sigilyph or Gengar, I could keep going for some time. I'm not going to bother. Any Psychic Pokemon will be good with this. Even Deoxys is then able to hit for 30 damage for just a Psychic Energy. It's not much, but it allows him to attack for 1 energy where otherwise he wouldn't be able to. You will be seeing this card a lot. At number 4, we see Enhanced Hammer, and I don't really want a reprint being this high up in my top 10 cards of the set, but the fact of the matter is, the format at the moment is rampant with double colourless energy. It's rampant with fighting decks that are playing strong energy. It's rampant with plasma decks, and quite frankly, Enhanced Hammer screws over any deck that relies too much on special energy. Enhanced Hammer is a very good card. It is a card that you should have in a lot of decks, and it can really help you to win against a lot of decks. Very few decks rely entirely on basic energy nowadays, and Enhanced Hammer can be very, very good. Don't forget, of course, that the Drift Blim that has the attack, which does 50 damage times the amount of special energy in your opponent's discard pile for just a colourless energy, is still in the format. At number 3, we have the Team Flare cards. They are completely different, but I'm putting them as one. We don't know how good they are going to be. I can tell you that for colourblind people, these cards kind of suck. Yay, red background and black writing. Whoop. Cheers for that, Pokemon. But the fact of the matter is, they're fun little tools which screw over your opponent's Pokemon. Headringer makes the attacks of Pokemon do 1 colourless energy more, cost 1 colourless energy more, and quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this is good for all the reasons I said Dimension Valley's just good. We like to lower attack cost, we like to accelerate energy. By the same token, we like to get rid of energy, and we like to raise attack cost. A deck revolving around something like Headringer and Hammers could be very, very good very, very quickly. Jamming Net basically acts like a hard charm, so it's not particularly great, certainly not in the way that Headringer is, but essentially it's like a hard charm for you attached to your opponent's Pokemon, stopping them attaching their own Pokemon tool. I think this could also be very, very good in the right kind of deck. At number 2, we have Gengar EX and Mega Gengar EX. One doesn't really work so well without the other, although here I am on the Gengar EX train. Its first attack can be done for free with Dimension Valley, which is fine, but it's Dark Corridor that I like. 60 damage and poison switch to the bench, and then you can put something active like Trevenant to block trainers or Sigilyph to block EX Pokemon. And let us not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that as we're playing a deck with Dimension Valley and Psychic Energy in as well, we are going to be able to attack with Sigilyph, and we're going to be able to attack with Trevenant. That makes it good. Mega Gengar EX is a card which I like, but I'm wary of because it revolves around what your opponent does. If your opponent puts down attacks you can use, yay. If they don't, then boo. If your opponent's Pokemon don't have attacks you want, it's going to be less good. Having said that, they're going to put down attacks that they want, so you're going to be able to copy them as well. Situationally good, but not to the point I think Gengar EX is. And that leads me to the number 1, which I'm assuming you've already guessed by now, is Manectric. And I am really unsure about this, and that makes me very, very happy. I don't really know what the best card in the set is. Right now, I don't think Manectric EX is particularly good. He goes in there for potential, for 2 particular reasons. First of all, it is exactly the kind of Pokemon that somebody at some point is going to break. Somebody at some point is going to make a Pokemon where you go, ooh, that's good. And it's going to be that deck that revolves around Manectric EX. The other thing is, there might be cards in the future which go very well with this. The original Manectric EX I like. It does essentially 120 damage if your opponent's Pokemon has a tool on it. A lot of the time they will, but let's not forget that there are cards which are tools that you can put on your opponent's Pokemon to make it do 120 damage. But it's Mega Manectric EX's attack that we're really interested in here, Turbo Bolt. Attach 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. You use something like Battle Compressor to put energy in your discard pile, then you use Turbo Bolt to charge up anything you like on the bench. And the beautiful thing about this is Mega Manectric EX only needs 1 lightning energy. That is the only specific energy it needs in order to attack. Battle Compressor allows you to search for the energy that goes in your discard pile. So you could just be running 1 grass, 1 psychic, 1 metal, search for it using Battle Compressor, attach it from the discard with Manectric, and you can legitimately be running attackers that only use, that use a particular kind of basic energy and only be running 1 of it. I mean, you'd want at least 2 for if it's prized, but hopefully you get my point here. There is potential here. Now, I've played a few of these decks and I've beaten all the ones I've played, and that's not a boast. It is basically saying that people aren't using it right. I've seen this played with Dark Pokemon, and I don't really see why. Dark Pokemon have regular Eviltau, and they have Y-Cyclone, which is a 2 energy attack, which conserves energy. You don't need a Mega EX here. Now, it is weak to fighting, and that's something you have to watch. But all you basically need here is an EX, preferably a basic Pokemon, with a high energy attack cost, which you wouldn't usually be able to pay. Boom! In comes Mega Manectric EX and fixes it. And let's face it, both Manectric and Mega Manectric EX are 2 hitting even Mega EXs. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a pretty good starting point. Not to mention, of course, the fact that you could turn this into a toolbox deck running every type of basic energy and a bunch of different attackers. Whether it will be successful, I don't know, but it is certainly something, ladies and gentlemen, which I think you should be considering. And that is my top 10 cards of Phantom Forces. And yes, I know most of them were more than 1 card, but the good news is, it's my list, and I said it was fine. As always, make sure you comment, like, subscribe and all of that stuff. And if you want me to do future top 10s, stick down in the comments that you enjoyed it, and preferably give me a top 10 list you would like me to have a go at in the future. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to put your own top 10 list of cards from Phantom Forces in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourselves until next time. My name's Ross Gilbert, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.